Our recess bell rings. We drop everything, head for the nearest door, run outside. Once we're there, we can do whatever we want. And then this stupid adulting thing steps in. Hi, I'm Dr. Lori Stevick Rust. 40 years of sitting with people through their hardest moments has taught me one thing. Our power lives in our courage to be real. This is where we stop pretending and we find our way back to ourselves. I'm glad you're here. Now pull up a chair. This is Becoming Real. So the other day, my 31-year-old daughter, Caitlin, called me to tell me that she thought we should have adult recess, that somebody should invent that it should become a thing. And we laughed. But over the next couple of days, it really got me thinking about recess. I do miss recess. I really miss recess. I mean, think about it. If we could have our adult recess, how might it help our current state? Which, let's be honest, is really quite heavy. We just have to look around to see and feel the tension, fighting and distress. And we all seem to be dealing with our own versions of grief and illness and financial pressures, anxiety about work, and real concerns about housing and safety. We're angry about the state of our divided country. And I know that some of that division has found its way into our own families. People who once sat around the same table barely speaking or no longer speak at all. Let's be honest, you don't have to look very hard or be a psychologist to see how much of our energy is going towards simply coping and getting through the day. Maybe that's why Katie's comment has stayed with me. I keep thinking about what human beings have always relied on to survive difficult times. What have we intentionally or unintentionally leaned on to cope when life struggles just couldn't be quickly fixed? What has really endured across generations and cultures? So I did a little bit of research and discovered one of the key answers to our best coping strategies, both historically and currently, is play. Now, I know play may seem like a strange place to land in the middle of everything happening around us. So let me talk about what I mean. I say play, and what comes to your mind? Probably it's a vacation. It's a new hobby. And I mean, it can be those things, but it could and maybe should be bigger than that. Play is actually less about the activity itself than what happens inside of us while we're doing it. It's the state in which curiosity takes over. We stop evaluating ourselves and we simply become absorbed in whatever that experience is. That's play. Now, that can happen while laughing with an old friend, working on a puzzle, making something, or getting lost in a book. It can also happen through sports, games, and all kinds of different silliness and silly activities. Your version of play may look nothing like anybody else's. But throughout time, human beings have always found ways to enter that state, even during difficult periods. Those moments of playfulness give the mind and the body a chance to recover without requiring the problem to just disappear. I mean, that's not really what recovery or coping is about, because most of the time we don't have control over making problems disappear overnight. Which brings me back to Katie's comment about needing adult recess. I now have granddaughters. And the other day I watched my 3.5-year-old granddaughter, Isla, move so quickly and naturally into play. Anybody who's been around children knows their imaginations erupt. She could easily start laughing at the silliest of things, and almost everything makes her curious. Sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Imagine if adults could do that. Our recess bell rings. We drop everything, head for the nearest door, run outside. Once we're there, we can do whatever we want. And then this stupid adulting thing steps in. We tell ourselves, yeah, we can play when the work is finished and everyone else is taken care of. We wait for the exact right time to present itself, even though deep down we know it never really will. Think about the last time you had something that truly felt like recess. I don't mean just a vacation, because vacations usually involve planning, packing, and making sure everyone else is having a good time. Now, I'm owning my bias here by saying I see all of you women out there nodding, as we tend to be the travel agents, the concierge service, and the curators of fun. Okay, wait a minute. I digress. Back to vacations. Yes, of course, vacations can feel wonderful and exciting and relaxing and all of that good stuff. But I'm talking about a time when nothing was expected of you. You became fully absorbed in something simple and simply because you enjoy it. Now, most of us grown-ups can't remember the last time we experienced that. We treat play as a nice to have rather than something that serves as a must have, an important must have. Now, let me try to convince you that play, laughter, and fun is really a therapeutic must have. And then let's talk about ways to consciously bring more of it into our lives, because this is important stuff. Okay, so here's what play does for the brain. When we are under sustained stress, our attention narrows. There's volumes and decades of research around that. The brain becomes very good at scanning for what is wrong, what might happen next, and what still needs to be handled. We know this is deeply embedded in our primitive brain to keep us safe. Okay, we got that. But we tend to struggle with when to turn it off and when it's just not needed. And that sustained practice becomes exhausting, particularly when the threat is simply uncertainty itself. And since we live in a world that is uncertain, that seems pretty ironic and creates the exhausting loop. But play interrupts that loop and that pattern. Of course, the problem doesn't disappear, but our attention can simply move somewhere else for just a few minutes. And that brief shift gives the brain a chance to disengage from the anxiety, worry loop that it has been running. And then when we return back, we return with more flexibility. It's like play was our reset or our reboot. Researchers who studied sustained attention have found that brief mental breaks can actually help people remain focused better over time. That's because the brain appears to habituate or adjust to the current state when it stays locked onto the same task or concern for too long. So think about it. A short change in attention can help us re-engage and get better clarity. The solution is not to just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and sustain the same loop. We need a break. That's what I mean by a reset moment. It's not a magical clearing of the brain, and it doesn't require us to stop caring about what's important or what's happening right in front of us, of course. But it does give the mind something else to do besides rehearsing and playing over and over the same worry. And we all know that rehearsing and playing of repeated worries, concerns, and anxiety thoughts is exhausting us to the place of oftentimes becoming ill. And here's another bonus. Play can actually change the range of information that we pay attention to. Here's what I mean. Fear and anxiety tend to pull our attention towards that threat. But amusement, interest, and curiosity can widen our field. We begin to see more than the problem directly in front of us, which by default gives the brain access to more possibilities, more responses, and actually over time better coping strategies that come to us when we're engaged in play or disconnection. So it's like learning to cope through fun and play. Now, I can imagine that we all could certainly get our head around that. And of course, lately we've been hearing an awful lot about curiosity, and for good reason. Curiosity is especially interesting because it engages parts of the brain involved in reward, motivation, and memory. When we are genuinely curious, the brain becomes more receptive to information. We remember better, including some things that are not directly related to whatever first made us curious. It's like it expands our brain. Curiosity moves us from, oh my God, what is going to happen, towards, I wonder what will happen if I try something different. Now that's a meaningful shift in a brain that has been living in vigilance or anxiety. And then, of course, there's laughter that can come from play. We sometimes talk about laughter as though it's simply evidence that we found something funny. But laughter is something the entire body does. It's physiological. When we laugh hard, you know this, our breathing changes, our abdominal muscles contract, and our heart rate rises. We find ourselves saying things like, "Stop, I can't breathe." Tears are running down our face. And one study found that some of the immediate cardiovascular changes during laughter moves in the same direction as exercise does. Now, I'm not going to tell you that laughing for 2 minutes replaces 20 minutes on a bike. The research doesn't really support that. But in my magical way of thinking, I believe it does, which is why I laugh as I pass by my exercise bike and then throw another piece of clothing on the seat. Okay, another tangent. But seriously, the fascinating point is that the body does not experience laughter as merely a pleasant thought. A real laugh creates a brief burst of physical activation. When it ends, we often experience an exhale that is deep and long and protracted. And that triggers a sense of release within the body, of tension and of anxiety. Social laughter also activates the brain's opioid system, the system involved in pain relief, pleasure, and social bonding. In experimental studies, people showed greater pain tolerance after spending some time laughing together. Now, that doesn't really even need research because I think intuitively we've all experienced that. And it helps to explain why laughing with someone can make us feel closer to them. For just a moment, that shared laughter is two nervous systems that are sharing rhythm, attention, and emotional experiences. Now, we've all felt the difference between politely saying, "That's funny," to a stupid or silly dad joke, and laughing so hard with someone that we can barely finish the story. That second experience changes the body's ability to cope, our immune system, and our resilience, which also helps explain why laughter shows up sometimes in places where we might think it really doesn't belong or it's inappropriate. You know, people laugh at funeral luncheons, if you've ever looked around and noticed that. Families sometimes find themselves laughing in hospital rooms. Caregivers develop a form of humor that only another caregiver fully understands. That laughter doesn't mean the grief has lifted or the diagnosis has become less serious or that it's disrespectful to the person who died or somehow speaks to the love and deep loss of the relationship. What it simply means is that the nervous system has briefly touched something besides pain. I've sat with many grieving people as a psychologist, and I've personally buried people I couldn't imagine, and some days still can't, living without. And I accept and see the value of embracing the fact that laughter, smiling, and deep pain, sadness, and grief absolutely live together. You know, you've probably experienced this. Someone tells the story of the person who died, and they know that that person would have wanted that story told. And suddenly everyone is laughing while wiping away tears. The laughter brings that person back into the room for even just a moment. It's part of the love. It's part of how we cope. So it begs the question, is play and laughter just simply a distraction? Well, in some ways, yes. Play can distract us from the problem. But distraction is not always unhealthy. Now, there is a difference between refusing to face something and giving the brain a brief rest from actually having to face it. The difference here, avoidance keeps us from returning to the problem. That is not healthy. But a reset helps us return to the circumstance, the situation, with more capacity to cope. This is especially important when a problem cannot be solved today. If you're waiting for test results, caregiving for someone with dementia, or living through financial uncertainty, more thinking may not produce an answer. At some point, the brain is repeating the same question over and over because it has nowhere new to go. But a playful moment can interrupt the repetition. You become absorbed in a puzzle, laughing at something ridiculous, or follow a small curiosity. The problem, of course, is still waiting, but it has not occupied every minute of the day for you. That's why I like the idea of microdosing play. That's what I'm calling it today. It's my new item that I've actually placed on my calendar. I give it planned time. We'll see how long that lasts, but that's my intention. We're not waiting for an entire free afternoon. I mean, that would be a lovely asset and a lovely thing to aspire to. But instead, we're back to reality. We're allowing small moments of laughter, curiosity, and absorption to just enter an ordinary day, an ordinary Wednesday afternoon. And now, for those of you who are hearing the word play, let me say, it doesn't have to look silly. Of course, in my house, it usually is. I can't escape it. I married a goofy, funny, silly guy, and both of my daughters are very quick-witted, funny, and have an amazing sense of humor. So I really can't escape it. And quite honestly, nor do I want to. But play doesn't have to be dancing in the grocery stores or other silly acts. You can focus on being more playful with your words, with ideas or stories. Play can happen while working on a puzzle, wandering through a bookstore, or simply exchanging the same old joke with someone who knows exactly where it's going to land. Some people play through movement. Others become playful when they're making something or following a subject that fascinates them. Your version may look nothing like anyone else. And really, isn't that actually the point? It doesn't have to be prescriptive or measured or graded. And that brings up another connection in my head. How recess and gym class are very different. I happen to have hated gym class, but loved recess. Now, some of you out there were probably those kids who loved both. But both of these experiences were built around very different expectations. I had an undiagnosed neurological condition. You've probably heard me talk about that before. And no one, of course, understood it at the time, including me. I simply knew that my body could not do some of the things other children seemed to be doing very easily in gym class. And gym class made those differences even more public and uncomfortable. I mean, let's be honest, when teams were chosen, I was the one who was standing there while the two captains worked their way through the group. Eventually, I'd be the kid left at the end who had to be placed on one of the teams. Being chosen last did not feel very good, of course. Mostly because it's really a particular kind of shame because everyone is allowed to witness how other children get to decide your value and worth. Another sidebar here. Whoever thought public ranking would build character in children's bodies and nervous system, I have some professional and not so professional feedback for you and a few unkind words. I'm hoping that our school systems continue to embrace that that is not the gold standard. And now I know through many of my teachers that much has been changed in the school system around these issues and more sensitivities around differences and different abilities. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful. But recess felt entirely different. The child who struggled in gym could create an imaginary world, trade stickers under a tree or walk along the fence watching everyone else. Some children wanted to run while others wanted to have conversations or time alone. I was the one with the conversations and the talking, of course. Gym class placed us under evaluation, but recess, oh, beautiful recess, gave us the freedom to follow what interested us without having to demonstrate that we were good at it. We know that evaluation of anything actually changes the experience. Part of our attention leaves what we're actually doing, and we begin to monitor how we appear, how we're doing it, how we're being perceived. Recess gave us another way. Now, that's important for adults who believe they're not playful. You may have rejected a version of play that made you feel exposed, self-conscious, or inadequate, but your own way back to bringing play into your life might still be waiting for you. Okay, so how do we bring back more laughter, play, and joy into our lives? I'm going to say here that there are three ways that I can think of off the top of my head because we have to give you 3, 4, 5 ways, right? But I'm sure one way or 68 ways is acceptable too. But let me talk about the big ones, or at least the ones that come to my mind right now. First, for me, all roads start with curiosity. So let's follow it. Think about what made you lose track of time as a child before anyone evaluated whether you were good at it. Then look for the adult version of that experience. You could also follow a new question simply because it interests you. Curiosity gives the brain somewhere to go besides back into the worry loop, back into the mundane, back into the routine, which is exhausting and certainly no fun. Maybe as a kid, you read under a blanket, built things, rearranged your room, or created complicated stories for your dolls. Perhaps you collected rocks or organized the neighborhood children into some elaborate show. The activity doesn't need to sound impressive. Pay attention to what absorbed you. The child who read under that blanket may need a rainy afternoon, a ridiculous novel, and a phone that they've left in another room to recreate that experience. The child who collected rocks may still enjoy searching an antique store with nothing particular that they're looking for to buy. Your play history is not asking you to recreate your childhood. It helps you recognize the conditions under which curiosity came naturally to you, a time that has now simply disappeared. You may discover that play already does exist somewhere in your life. You just have to unearth it. You know, a book club can feel playful when you're laughing and absorbed in the conversation. But the same book club can feel like work when you simply skim to the ending of the book in the parking lot or the driveway and spend the evening monitoring whether you sounded intelligent or stupid in your dialogue. You may not need a new hobby. You may need a different way of being inside something you already do. Okay, number 2. Just because I'm loving this word of microdosing play, let's use that as number 2. Microdose play instead of waiting for it. You know, we tend to treat joy as a destination, back to our vacations or experiences that we plan and organize. And again, they're wonderful and playful and all of those things. But what we end up telling ourselves is that we'll get to that play, that fun, that joy when we're on vacation or when life finally becomes less complicated. But most of the good stuff in life happens on an ordinary Tuesday. In one study, adults spent a week paying attention to the playful moments already occurring in their days. That small practice increased playfulness and produced short-term improvements in well-being. Now, the researchers didn't assign everyone a new activity. They trained people to notice a state they had been overlooking already in their life. That's the idea behind microdosing play. So for the next week, maybe you consider writing down one moment each day when you feel amused, curious, or completely absorbed. It might be a funny exchange in the grocery store, a word game while waiting for an appointment, or a conversation that made you forget to check the time. Then make laughter easier to access. No more stifling the laugh because you are a grown-up and you don't want to feel silly. Pay attention to the people who make laughter come naturally to you. Track them down and don't let them get away. Call that friend who can change the emotional temperature of your day. These are treasures. Keep the ridiculous show, the comedian, or the family group text nearby for moments when your brain needs somewhere else to go that is going to make you smile. Now, of course, you can't order yourself to laugh on command. And if you did, that is kind of weird and odd, and we may need to examine that. But you can place yourself closer to the people and experiences that tend to naturally bring it out in you. Microdosing play means allowing these moments to become part of an ordinary day instead of waiting and planning and preparing for it on an afternoon that seems open on your calendar. And third, protect a brief adult recess. Thank you, Katie. And take it outside when you can. Choose a small opening that already exists in your day and claim it as recess. 10 minutes is enough, but if your life only allows 2 minutes right now, start there. During that time, remove the expectations that something useful must come from it. I'm still a work in progress on this. There are many days that it's hard for me to think that quote unquote wasting time that doesn't lead to something productive or project driven is frivolous. And I have to hear myself and remind myself that I need as much recess as I am preaching to you. More to come on that as I continue to work on my own progress. But maybe it's something like work on a puzzle, doodle, making something, or simply just wandering through a bookstore without looking for anything in particular. To my overachievers, that sounds exhausting and scary and anxiety producing, but I promise you, when you try to engage in these different activities, something in you is going to shift. You know, these times or activities that we tend to unconsciously move towards, and then we beat ourselves up for wasting time. Those are the ones. That's our recess. Now, for better health benefits, take that recess outside when you can. For decades, I've been reporting on something called vitamin G, G as in green. It simply is about having contact, exercise, or simply being in green space. This could mean walking through a park, sitting on the porch, gardening, or playing outside with your grandkids. You don't have to turn it into a workout. Leave the step count alone, because that can happen on occasion. Put down the phone and allow the movement of the trees, the sound of birds, or the feeling of air to catch your attention. Being in green space changes how our brain processes information, and exercising in green space actually increases the oxygenation and makes our workouts better. The outdoors naturally invites curiosity because it's never exactly the same twice. And in a structured, rigid day, that is truly a gift. And then make sure you protect that time from becoming just another performance. Resist the urge to track your progress, post the result, or decide whether you're doing play correctly. Did I do it right? Here's the warning though. You may feel restless. A voice may be circling in your head, reminding you that the laundry is waiting for you, or that the time couldn't be more, or that your time could certainly be used more efficiently. That restlessness shows how thoroughly adulthood has tied our worth to usefulness. That stupid adult thing again. Now, you don't have to argue with that voice. In fact, I would encourage you not to. Let it keep talking while you return to whatever has caught your attention. This is the secret trick as to how the brain overrides the noise of your unwelcome thoughts. Let them be, and don't give them energy by arguing with them or trying to justify your actions of play. These practices are intentionally small because play doesn't need to change the circumstances around you, because the change is there in your brain and your body. Okay, let me end by reminding us all that we usually imagine resilience as the ability to endure more, the ability to bounce back. And that's true. But resilience also depends on our ability to shift states of being, to move out of vigilance, reconnect with another person, and remember that curiosity still exists and it's a powerful force. It actually, are you sitting down for this one, helps us rebuild the neurons in our brain and essentially creates new pathways. So simply remaining curious helps us rebuild our brain. I mean, what could be more powerful and valuable than rebuilding our brain? Long before we had psychological language for coping, human beings laughed together, told stories, and made games out of whatever was available. They found brief openings inside circumstances they could not immediately change. So I think my wise Katie is right. Maybe we do need adult recess. We may not have a bell that rings or a playground waiting outside the door, although I think I may install one after thinking about this stuff. But we can stay close to the people and experiences that make laughter come easily and curiosity return. That is often where play is waiting. And maybe for now, we begin there. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Before you go, if this episode touched something real in you, please consider sharing it with someone who may need that too. If you'd like to stay connected beyond the podcast, sign up for my email list at drloristevick.com. That's where I share more reflections, resources, and an invitation to join the real conversation, which is my free live monthly gathering for women who want deeper conversations beyond the podcast. Until next time, be brave enough to be real.